And again, going back to this idea that war reveals human nature, and this is Dr. Frankl's way of putting this exact same thing that I say. Back to the book. Life in a concentration camp tore open the human soul and exposed its depths. Is it surprising that in those depths we again found only human qualities which in their very nature were a mixture of good and evil? The rift dividing good from evil, which goes through all human beings, reaches into the lowest depths and becomes apparent even on the bottom of the abyss which is laid open by the concentration camp. So we've got this idea once again that there's a dichotomy in people. This dichotomy that you're capable of doing extreme good and you're capable of doing extreme evil. And we've seen it a bunch. We've seen it a bunch on this podcast. You look at the My Lai massacre. Those guys were normal guys that committed extreme evil, straight up evil. Normal guys that were, 4 days earlier probably would have done something heroic to save someone. Yeah. And here they are at the other end of the spectrum. And I think that we have to face that not only individually do you have that, but then obviously as the group you have that. As a group of human beings, we have that capability. We've seen it over and over again. And if you want to know what that good part is, you got to know what that darkness is too.
Yeah, the group thing is interesting. Like, you know how you always hear, not always, but you hear sometimes about these riots on college campuses, whether it be after a game or something like that. Bro, at a glance, you'd think, dang, is this college full of just hooligans? Like, if this bit, like huge riots, But it's that. It's like as an individual or, under quote unquote normal circumstances, they're just normal people. Yeah. Guys, girls, whatever, they're just normal people. But then you put them in this particular situation in some way extreme or whatever, it's a spectrum. And they just act different. And the whole group dynamic too, they just act different.
The group dynamic can be a very, very scary thing.
Yeah, man.
There's no doubt. It can be a very, very scary thing. And that's why, even when he's talking about, and I mentioned this when I was on Joe Rogan's last podcast, I'm like, the idea of individual freedom and acting as an individual is so important as to structure your life around, to say, look, I'm not part of this group. This group is not me.
Yeah.
This group is not me. They don't represent me. I represent me.
Exactly.
And I have my own individual choices. And that's what he's saying in here. The minute you give away to the herd, that's when you start going, you no longer control it.
Yeah.
And when you give up that control, that's a scary, scary thing. And that's when these evil things take place.
Yeah. And that once again, it's like, it's easy to say now, because grouping yourself is actually a survival mechanism.
True.
So it's not going to be just that. You're not going to naturally just be an individual and act like an individual and conduct yourself in all these extreme situations as an individual. You're not just going to naturally do that.
Totally true.
So I guess it just helps to know these things.
Well, that's you're 100% right on both facets. Number one, yes, grouping and fitting in is a survival instinct that people have, and that's why trends happen, and that's why nations happen, and that's why groups occur in people. And
politics.
Yeah, and politics and in everything, right? To get into these groups, and I mean, it's weird now because with the internet, you can have groups, you can be part of these groups anonymously. Whatever group you want. And you can connect with all these different people. Yeah. But it's also important to make sure that you do remember that you are an individual, that that you don't want to give up that last shred of human will to decide what your attitude is going to be.
Yeah, dang. And today, in our luxurious society, if you can consciously navigate your way clear of that, of falling into the group trap. It's what it is. It's a trap. Because you don't have... If you can do that successfully, bro, you won't fall for the tricks, man. Like, that's the thing. We all get tricked. All the way down to just something as seemingly benign as marketing. Just, man, you'll just fall for way less tricks.
You don't like those tricks out there in the world, do you?
No, I don't. Probably fell for too many of them, I think.
I'm gonna wrap this book. This book is not long. It's a very fast read, and actually he goes into, the more of the psychological, the psychiatrist, the actual academic of it than I covered. But this is a fast read. I mean, it's only 150 pages or so, and you definitely get a raw look at human nature. But this closing, I think, is very, very powerful. Going back to the book, a human being is not one thing among others. Things determine each other, but man is ultimately self-determining. What he becomes within the limits of endowment and environment, he has made out of himself. In the concentration camps, for example, in this living laboratory and on this testing ground, we watched and witnessed some of our comrades behave like swine, while others behaved like saints. Man has both potentialities within himself. Which one is actualized depends on decisions, but not on conditions. Our generation is realistic, for we have come to know man as he really is. After all, man is that being who invented the gas chambers of Auschwitz. However, he is also that being who entered those gas chambers upright with the Lord's Prayer or the Shema Yisrael on his lips.